If you've ever been in that place where you're wondering whether it's still worth going, whether one more step even matters, this conversation is for you.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious, motivation, be audacious, innovation, be audacious, inspiration, be bold, motivation, be audacious.
If people would understand how close, how razor thin the difference between success and failure is, they'd be shocked.
Wow.
And the difference, is amazing. It's almost frightening when you realize the things you may have missed in life because you gave up 1 minute too soon. One of the things I wanted to express in this is that you actually have an obligation when you're born into this world and receive that wisdom to live your life as best as you can.
Because sometimes the distance between giving up and breaking through is a whole lot smaller than we think. This podcast is all about helping you unlock your inner greatness and help you live your best audacious life ever. Today's guest is Ed Rahill. He is an author of 1 Mile at a Time. It's a memoir that uses endurance racing, legacy, and lived experience to explore what it really means to keep going when life gets hard. You know, what stood out to me in this conversation was how deeply personal his message is. You know, this isn't about racing or achievement. It's about purpose, resilience, and the baton we hand to the next generation. So there really is a lot to this one. So I've set the table here. We got you set. Let's turn to my conversation with Ed Rahill. Enjoy. Hey, Ed, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here, my friend.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you and your audience. I'm looking forward to this very much.
Yeah, same here. On this podcast, we spend much time encouraging individuals to live their best audacious life. And what really is beautiful about that is that, and we use oftentimes this analogy of like a journey, right? Life is like a journey, and we're on our own individual pathway. And on that pathway, we're going to have our own obstacles, our own challenges, our own milestones, our own pitfalls, all of those things. And it really is on us to embrace that journey and accept, everything that comes with that. And I think that really fits nicely with sort of the work that you're doing in terms of the importance of sort of small, consistent actions and how transformative they can be in our lives over a period of time. And so, and you've got a running challenge that kind of really reflects that audacious mindset when it comes to like persistency and I think the part that I really appreciate, and we'll dive into that in with your book as well, but about the fact that greatness is really measured kind of 1 step, 1 mile, 1 footprint at a time. And I think that's
one mile at a time. If people would understand how close, how razor thin the difference between success and failure is, they'd be shocked. And the book really is an analogy. Well, while I'm still the champion endurance road racer in the United States, and still hold that record, the book kind of becomes an analogy, or basically a metaphor for life, because you'll see in the book, I came this close to quitting.
Wow.
And the difference, is amazing. It's almost frightening when you realize the things you may have missed in life because you gave up 1 minute too soon. I think that's really what I'm trying to do. The second thing, what I loved about what you're saying, to me, I try to capture what I've learned about life and how we as human beings are but a member of a much larger relay team of life. And there are those who ran their legs before us, who lived their lives the best they could, but they take the time as they came around the bend into to that final 40-yard stretch, and they handed off the baton to the next runner. They're really handing off their experience, knowledge, and wisdom.
Yes.
And that's why we as a human race are better people than we were thousands of years ago, because every generation, we built on it. There you go.
Yep.
You look pretty good. I can see you pretty well. And I think that's something I try to capture. And I think it goes to what you introduced with. One of the things I wanted to express in this is that you actually have an obligation when you're born into this world and receive that wisdom to live your life as best as you can.
Yes.
And you basically do the best you can. It's almost like being a little bit selfish, but it really isn't. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have your victories and defeats, and you're going to learn things. Because at the end of the day, your life is going to end too. You're going to be finishing your leg of that relay race. And the obligation I believe we all have when we reach that point is to try to hand it off to the next generation.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be selfish about your life when you're living it to your fullest, but just understand you've got an obligation somewhere down the road to basically hand it off to the next generation so they can learn from your experience. And I think that's how, yeah.
No, I love that. And I absolutely, sorry to interject that. I absolutely love that. I do want to add a point, because I truly, truly believe that as we as individuals, if I'm living my life to the fullest, and I'm going to define, living my life to the fullest by using my natural God-given gifts, talents that are inherent to me, as we all have them. I believe that if I'm using my gifts as they're meant to, they are going to be of benefit and service to other people. They naturally are going to impact people. They're going to influence people. So as much as, and I think you said, sir, you sort of alluded to, it comes across as being selfish because you're living your life. I'm actually not. I really, truly believe that if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, if I'm being the person who I am, so, I'm going to use my creative skills to start a podcast. Well, that podcast is going to influence people in positive ways, that I am living for other people. So that's the last piece I'd add to that.
I totally get what you're saying. I think what we owe it to those who came before us to do the best we can with what we got.
Yes.
And always have in the back of your mind that we got set between 70 and 90 years on this planet. There's going to come a time when you are a part of a much greater humanity, the human race. And that's part of your making life is better because you were here. That's something, if you get into the book, my grandmother, and actually on her, I think the day before she died, well, she basically would try, I was raised by her, and she was always concerned about the right attitude. And I remember her saying, she called me Mike or Mick, that's my middle name. And she says, all I ask of you is at the end of your life, be able to say the world is a better place because I was here. And that, she says, if you live your life that way, you're going to be at peace at the end.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because
Absolutely.
we all are going to reach that end. And if you can honestly say that, it was a life well lived.
Yeah.
And that's how we should be making all our decisions. Is the world a better place because we were here? And I don't think we teach that much anymore. That bothers me. It inspired me to write the book the way I did, because I feel in our society we're kind of losing track of the continuum of who we are and the role we play.
Yes.
And I feel bad about that, but that's inspired me to write the book.
So what sparked we'll talk about the book. I'd love to know what sparked the idea of to run a mile, every day for a year.
What inspired me to write the book, came off of a very emotional, difficult situation. I was married for 30 years and never dreamed I'd be getting a divorce. It just was not. And you got to be careful because you go through different emotions with it. And, there's the resentment that I give it 30 years of my life, what I don't deserve this, but then there's the understanding of what you did right and wrong. And one of the things that self-examination, I have 4 children, and I realized, one evening, as I started writing them a letter, they knew nothing about me before I married their mother. They never knew who I was. They never know that I'm a world champion. They never knew, how I grew up. I was raised by my grandmother, and and all the trials and tribulations that got me to where it is. All they saw was their dad as success. They never saw the everything I had to go through to become that. In a sense, I think one of the reasons my marriage failed is my wife never knew this. Really, truly never knew me. And what drove me to be a provider. My grandmother. Maybe if I could take for your audience just a quick minute to talk about the theme of the book.
Yep.
My grandmother's an important part of this. My lineage goes all the way back to Ireland, and my great grandmother, at 14, was sent over on a boat by herself to come to be a maid on Delaware Avenue in Buffalo, New York. And she never saw her family again, never saw her siblings, lived her entire life as a maid in that home. And, she basically never was allowed she never had the opportunity to pursue her dreams other than what she was told to do. She met a great grandfather and had children, one of which was my grandmother. And my grandmother went through the same pattern. She, basically when she was asked to leave school when she was in 5th grade to help support the family, and her first job was walking the railroad tracks in South Buffalo picking up coal. And she told me that was considered a good job because it was a very marketable commodity. People always wanted coal. And that's how she grew up. And then, she had never had nurturing as a child. She never had the experience of living the way children did. And that's not atypical for 100, 120 years ago, that we go back to our ancestors. And she basically was lucky enough to marry my grandfather, Ed Cottrell, who was an entrepreneur and go-getter. And he basically, spent a lot of time in Detroit convincing the Ford Motor to let him start a dealership in Western New York. And at 36, he got it. At 38, he's dead from appendicitis. So I got my grandmother 4 kids. She had everything she wanted in life, stay-at-home mom, had the ability, and then she had no, there was no welfare back then. There was nothing. She had no means to support her 4 children, never knew what to do. And she went through trials and tribulations of what it turned out. Let's put it this way. Ford even came by and tried to take the dealership away from her. In the book, you'll find out she built the largest, most successful Ford dealership in Western New York. First woman to ever own and operate a Ford dealership. But she was not concerned about being a business success. She was concerned about, her role in the world and making it a better place. When she had the opportunity to turn over to her sons to run, she immediately got involved with the March of Dimes and became chairman of the New York State March of Dimes. It was a charity thing she was doing. She wanted the world to be better, and she was trying to impact that on me. And I felt the only reason I'm where I am right now is because of her. And going back and tying into the fact is that I started to write my kids a letter because I realized while I had provided what she wanted me to be a provider the way her husband was going to be, so that she could raise the family and my wife could raise the family. And I put a roof over their head, took care of everything, made sure that they could pursue their dreams. But what she said, and this is something that makes me want to cry when I remember, I want you to be the first generation in our family to break the chains of broken dreams. Let your kids pursue their dreams. And I did that too well, but I never took the time because I didn't understand to explain to them why they're there and how they got there. And so that was the beginning of writing the book. And, it was it was an experience. And over the course of time, I've had tremendous business success. I'm president and chief financial officer of New York Stock Exchange Company, became CEO. And so I have a business success, but I had the thing that I looked at the most was my racing career, which was something I had from a passion of being with my grandmother and her owning a car dealership and growing up around cars. So that's how that whole thing goes. And I decided to write the book 1 mile at a time because the more I thought about it and shared it with people that I knew from my past, said this the story of this race is the story of your life.
Yes.
And it's something that everybody can learn from. So that's where the book came out. To show you how much I didn't care about my success with the race, it was my editor who came back. You're losing the lights. My editor came back and said, Ed, we've been researching this because we want to understand what you did. Do you know you still hold the world's record? No one has never driven across the continent of North America in a shorter time than you have ever had. And it was like that. I was less concerned about that accomplishment. I was more concerned about the future. That was the
Yes.
past.
Yes.
And so I tried to sculpture the book around as factually as I could. I researched the heck out of it. And I have in the back of the book about 72 newspaper articles, NBC nightly news broadcast on it, just to make sure that people realize that this is not made up. This is for real. And I told the story from the perspective of how you should live your life in the reality of it, including the heartbreaks and setbacks.
Yes.
We often live our lives well when everything's going well. Man,
Sure.
Every human being is gonna, and it just like 30 cars started out that last day, only 11 finished because everybody else gave up. And that's the way life is. How many people do you know that had talent, but they just didn't hang in there one more day? And
I had a friend when we were
yeah.
when we were in high school. He was an incredible artist. Man, like it was just natural to him, and he was always doodling and drawing stuff. He was an incredible artist, and to this day, he's still a friend of mine, and he never did anything with it. He never. In fact, I remember I've known him for like 30 years, and I actually forgot that he did this thing, right? Because I don't know if he fully capitalized on. Not to say that it's got to be something that you make a living off and it's your business and you make lots of money. That's not where I'm going with it. But the idea of using that skill, and I've oftentimes thought, man, he should have really tried something with it.
This is why, God bless him, because that's, by the way, in the book, I have an example where I hung in there and succeeded. But I'm telling you, as a human being, there's a lot of times that I've learned lessons where I should have hung in there a little longer. So I look at, I'm as human as anybody else.
Can you share one? I'd love to hear it. Can you share one? Do you have one?
I think basically I corrected it later on in life, but I got married and I was a cocky young guy. I was the youngest vice president ever hired by the Bell Hall Company. And the company, we ended up breaking it up, and I ended up thinking it was hot stuff, and I moved to Atlanta with my new wife and that I could start a business. Well, guess what? After a few months, I was really broken because it wasn't working well. I was depressed. I felt inadequate. I just all of a sudden, and I remember talking to a friend of mine. He says, when I was a vice president officer, when I picked up the phone to call the banks, they called me back immediately. He says, now I can't get a phone call returned. And so I basically gave up on pursuit of that business. What I learned from it, when I reflected, is that I gave up too soon, and that's what resulted in the successes later in life of going out and taking chances. There's 2 points in the book I want to talk about taking chances. The first is and this goes back to my grandmother. She said there's 2 types of people in this world. And I'm a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid. And she's just telling me stuff. And she says, there's 2 types of people. There's people where life happens to them. And there's people who happen to life. It's your decision who you want to be. And that's part of the foundation of when you're going on and trying to make yourself. The other point she was making, everybody's born into this life with certain capabilities, but that's not the end. If you have that attitude, you can become better than you can create your own, your own capabilities. You can become a better man at the end of your life than you were born into it. based on your free will of what to do.
Right.
And so I think that was important. And the other thing where she hit me with this, and I've had some debates with people about it. She says the most devastating emotion you will face in life is fear.
Hmm.
When everything's going against what you're trying to do, and the fear of failure and defeat and embarrassment and shame can be so overwhelming that it'll challenge everything you believe in. It'll challenge any capabilities you have, and you're going to want to give up. So that is you when you face that. She said, what you need to do. Remember, she went through this because she was having the dealership taken away from her, and she hung in there.
Right.
She hung in there 1 month, and and a new district manager came in rather than resign, and he gave her a whole year to pull it together. And in the book, there's a telegram from the executive vice president of Detroit to my grandmother, copying all the dealers in New York State, saying, "Congratulations," and then he started giving a lecture in the telegram. It says, I've decided that what this woman's been able to do, that we need to go out and hire more widowed mothers with 4 kids to run these dealerships because she's sure teaching you how to do it. And so, but you see where she came from?
Right.
It was
Right.
hanging in there
Yeah.
and not giving up. And so the theme of this book is you can accomplish things beyond your dreams of capability if you're willing to hang on 1 more mile at a time, one more moment at a time. You don't have to think about how far I had to go. When I made the decision to re-engage the race in last place, I had 2,200 miles to go. I remember I didn't think about it. I remember saying to myself, fire the car up. It's just 1 more moment, 1 more mile at a time, 1 car and 1 mile. And that's how I drove the whole race. It was not about where I had to go. Is that when I passed 1 car, I looked at another one down the road, and that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And that is the attitude that gives you the courage and the strength
Yep.
to go through it. And so if there's an attitude you learn in life, my failures with my first startup in business were lessons I learned. Should
Sure.
never have given up on it. Yeah, I did, but I didn't do it the second time. So I think that's part of the theme.
It's interesting because I think if you were to ask people, so if you're at that point and you talked about how thin that line is between quitting and success, right? And so if people were to ask themselves at that point when they felt like quitting and cashing in their chips and saying I'm done, it's over, if they're asked myself, hey, what if this was it? What if I was this close? Would they still quit? And I'm telling you, I think a lot of people would second guess that idea of quitting. If I said to you, you were this close, you were right there, would you still quit? And I think that's an incredible motivator.
It is. And I think as a human being trying to coach other people, whether they're friends or family or kids, use the failure and the quitting as a lesson.
Yes.
You as a lesson. You could have had this if you hung in there 1 more day. Don't ever let it happen again. And so in a sense, failure and disappointment can be a building block for you to become what it is, but you got to have the right people around you.
Yes.
To help you frame it, because defeat is one of the loneliest experiences you can have in life. And that's where the fear comes in that you're going to be that you're a failure, and that this is where we can help coach people that mean something to us, the way my grandmother did. This is a lesson. Never let it happen again.
Yes. Yeah. I wonder if you could talk about the parallels that exist between running and life.
Well, basically, it's very interesting. In the book, we start out the first time I became what I say to it, the man I became was I was captain of the track team, and it was the last mile relay where I was anchor. And we were outclassed. This was New York State, all Catholic meet, and we were totally outclassed. I had been undefeated in the quarter mile, and was not able to compete in the finals because there were so many boys who qualified. They eliminated by time, track time. I grew up in South Buffalo. Our track was a cinder stone track. Do you know how many seconds that takes off your run time as opposed to a tarp track?
Mm-hmm.
And the point was I got disqualified even though I had defeated two of the guys who ended up going to that meet. And so I was depressed as all hell. And I explained in the book how I really just was despondent. And then, as the only event that I could get into for my coach was the mile relay as anchor. And I just remember my guys getting slaughtered and thinking to myself, you're feeling sorry for yourself because you missed your chance to run in the state championship. And they were, and I remember, I'm captain, I'm not encouraging these guys. And the spirit arose in me about a sense of duty. This is part of the upbringing. I had a duty to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 440 yards. The best that I've been told, I was about 80 or 90 yards behind and came in second and was in first in the last 10 yards, and then rigor mortis come in. The recovery was set a new record. No one ever run it that fast. And that kind of taught me about the right attitude about giving up. Because what I did in that thing, it goes to the book. I remember saying to myself, that this is impossible to do, but it doesn't matter what I'm going to do. It's one stride at a time, 1 yard at a time, one runner at a time. And I approached it that way. And that kind of taught me things. To show you how emotional this is for me, I just did a book tour in Buffalo at Barnes & Noble.
Mm-hmm.
And how you think back to that early part of your life, was it true? Did I really accomplish what I said? Or am I creating a rose? Guess who walked in the door of that store? My 4 teammates.
Oh, wow.
I hadn't talked to them in 50 years, and they were in tears, and they already had the book. It was all true. And so it's important to understand the impact I had on their lives by giving the example of what I tried to accomplish. So this is where I think we get a little bit we misunderstand the impact we can have on other people's lives if we live it well.
Yeah.
You live it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I
think it goes back to what we said off the top, right? Like when you live who you are, that's a life well lived, and the impact you can have on others is just tremendous.
I think that's a learned behavior. I think it's part of the socialization of the human race, and it's the part of the good that I want the human race to pass on. It isn't the legacy is really hanging in there and being an example to your soulmates in the life you're living and the generations come after you about how to do the right thing, even if it not necessarily won't turn out the best for you. And I think, we go in later on in life, we go to the race, the automobile race, 3,100 miles. And, that it was the lessons of my previous experience in life that led me to the decision to go on. And I mean, it was crazy. Tim and I never thought we were going to win. And I mean, the TV cameras, the publicity, and all that was over the top. And I remember talking to a San Diego reporter who says, well, you just set a new world's record and accomplished this. Do you plan on doing any other events in the future, like over in Europe and that? And I remember sitting back, not standing there, just looking at the moment at the ground and looking back at her, said, and I can't remember what her name was, but I called her by name. I said, I will regret if this is the greatest thing I remembered for. Because that's how I wanted to live my life. There's a new day dawning. You go out there. It's an adventure, like you were talking about, and it's an adventure we should do our best at, come success or failure. But it's the example of what it is what I've tried to explain to people about taking chances and not giving up.
Yep.
I said one test you can do. If you're pursuing something and you want to give up and you've just had it, ask yourself you don't want to take the chances anymore. You sit back and you say to yourself, how will I feel about this a year from now if I give up? And how will I feel
Yeah.
about this if I don't give up and I lose? And I'll be a much happier man by not giving up and losing than never having taken a chance at all.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without
That's the
question.
key. You can live with yourself and give your best. You can't when you gave up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
whether it's in
powerful.
relationships, business, companies,
Yep.
whatever, there's analogies along the way for all.
Yep. It's interesting as you talked about that, after running the race, and if this is you regret it, that's the greatest thing you've ever done. It reminds you very much into something that we have here on this podcast. It's an element of what we call the bold framework. You might actually see it over my shoulder there, the bold framework. And essentially it's a formula to live your best audacious life. And it's an acronym, BOLD, and the B very much touches on that point where it's better than yesterday. So you've accomplished this feat today. It was fantastic. I hope you celebrate, whether climbing a mountain or running a race, whatever it was. Hope you celebrate it. You felt good about it. You were proud of your accomplishments. What can you do tomorrow better? Like, that was great. What can you do tomorrow better? And live with that mindset of always trying to overachieve and beat yourself in competition with yourself. And how can you do that? And that's really what that framework, that what the B stands for. The O is called outlast the adversity. There's always gonna be challenges. I'm sure when you're running, you're gonna come into challenges. You're gonna face obstacles. It's about outlasting that adversity. The feel to that feeling of quitting. Outlasting that adversity. L is live your truth. Is very much being authentic as to who you are. We just talked about that earlier, who you're supposed to be. And the last letter in that framework, D, is disrupt the norm. And sometimes you're going to go off that beaten path and do things differently than others have done. You think of inventors, you think of the Wright brothers trying to get us how to fly planes. Like, these are things you're going to have to go off the path. People are going to tell you that you're crazy. People are going to tell you that what you're doing can't be done, but you got to do it anyways. And that's sort of the formula for living your best audacious life. But the B very much is that, better than yesterday.
And it also comes down to, don't be afraid of the outcome. Be afraid
Yeah,
of not trying.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I think that's it. But it was coming back is that it all started as a letter to my kids, and then as I asked for some help from somebody to read to make sure I wasn't being overly critical of them or something, they
Yep.
said this is a manuscript. You got to write this thing. And
Yeah.
right now we're taking. I've formed a new company called 1 Mile Productions, LLC, where I've hired several people, a marketing director, a couple of consultants, and a secretary, and we're going to take this to a screenplay, and we're going to find ourselves a director that I think understands and has some maturity in it, and then get this thing. I plan on this becoming a major theoretical screenplay in a movie.
Beautiful. I
And
love it.
I'm getting a tremendous amount of encouragement with it. Um, I've learned more about how movies are made than you want to know, and you also, I'm getting a lot of it. I'm digressing a little bit, but I'm talking about where this is going.
Hmm.
I believe in it so much, and I believe it's a message that I would like to be part of my legacy of handing off when I'm dead.
Yep.
Some lessons we can all learn about how to live your life. And I've been getting advice. Don't go with Disney. Don't go with Amazon. And I'm getting, I got an attorneys. I had 2 producers wanting to come out and talk to me, and my attorney got, don't you dare talk to these guys. All they want to do is get your title and your name, and they'll write it in anything they want. So I'm learning a new industry, but I'm not afraid to do it. I came from the electric power industry. I have nothing understanding of media. And so I'm just sitting here, trying to take it all in. and make sure I listen to other people. Don't think that my ego is so strong that I know what to
Right.
do.
Right. Beautiful.
But that's kind of where we're going with it. I would hope that what people would find it entertaining. Um, I've gotten some exceptional reviews on it. If people go on Amazon and they read some of them, I don't know who these people are, but I'm really humbled by some of the comments that they've made about it.
Beautiful.
And so it's something that I'm grateful that I've gotten it to this level, but I do want to take it to the next level. And
Amazing.
I'm getting a pressure to potentially write another book, but that's not my profession. Just like I'm not a professional race car driver, I just accomplished the pinnacle within the field I was at. But then I looked at there's other things to do in life.
Right.
And so my point is I just want to take this to where we can go. I hope it has some impact on people's lives, because that was the intent. I hope it has some impact on my kids. I have 4 of them, and 2 of them I'm getting along with well, but 2 of them, how can I explain it? They don't think their dad knows anything, and it has not. It's one of those age groups where it goes back to, okay, real quick. It goes back to Mark Twain.
Okay.
And he was leaving Hannibal at 18, traveling the world for 2 years. He had to get out of Hannibal because there are a bunch of know-nothing, stupid farmers on the Mississippi River and knew nothing about life. And he wanted to go out and learn life. And when he came back 2 years later, he walks to the door, and I remember he talks about how he paused. He said, "Damn, you don't know how much my old man learned in the last 2 years." So I'm kind of hoping that my 2 kids that are ghosting me because I don't think I know what I'm doing, are going to have that epiphany when this thing comes out and really understand what their old man really knows.
There you
So,
go.
but it's, by the way, I've talked to a lot of people with kids. This is not atypical. They go through stages where they disown their mother and they think their dad's, whatever. And it's part of life, and I'm taking it in a good spirit and looking at it with the excitement and the challenge of seeing their eyes open wide when they see it on the screen.
That's something to strive for. I love
terrible
that.
for me to say.
No, I hear you. I love it. So, and thank you for sharing that. One thing I definitely want to ask and get your thoughts on is about staying consistent. When the motivation dies down. It's easy to get started, and it's great, and you're going, but eventually that motivation wanes a little bit. And any thoughts on how you keep that going?
Connection with your past. And the connection with your past can also be if you're gifted with the fact that you've had other people in your lives that you can call back on the experience on. Remember, part of going back to your past is having the foundation that what's your purpose in life. Remember at the beginning I said one of the things that was drilled in me very young, and my grandmother lived it up to the day she died, was the world a better place because I was here. And you need to reflect on that, because if otherwise your motivations, your will to go on are going to wither and pine, and you're dead.
Right.
Because when you it's suffering a defeat, thinking that you're not capable or worthy. But then I believe you need to think back, if you've been gifted with this little message. It doesn't matter. It matters what's your attitude.
Yes.
And am I on a mission to go back to the Blues Brothers, on a mission from God? The point is that you're trying to, you need to go back about where your self-respect comes from. Because if you're giving up and you're in that position, you give up, you've lost self-respect. And you need to go back to the beginning and the foundations and try to call on it a little bit. Yeah. And it from there can come the strength of will to go on. The That's not to say that you don't quit at something when you realize it was stupid. There's a difference. There's on a
Yes.
mission, and then there's I'm doing this because I want, and then you get into it and say, what a stupid thing for me to think that this is what we should have done.
Right.
Those are two different things. But correcting your actions and redirect. But as long as you're redirecting your life in another direction, failure is not. What did Winston Churchill say? Victory is fleeting. Failure is not final. It's the will to go on that counts. If you're if you're taking on a path and it's just falling apart, it's not working. Step back and say, what is Churchill saying? It's the
Yep.
will to go on. It doesn't necessarily go down that path, but you, with self-respect, are going to pick yourself up and you're going to make something of yourself on this.
Yes.
Failure. Don't be afraid of failure. That's
Yep.
what we talked about 10 minutes ago.
Yep. That's right.
Because you really, if you can take it as just a step in the process, it's like water off a duck's back. You just move on.
See, I like to think of it as for me, failure is not even part of the equation. I've won and been successful, or I've learned something new. That's how I frame it.
Exactly. And failure was a poor choice of words. It's just
No, it's
that.
fine.
It's that, boy, did I learn my lesson about that one. I'm not going to go on that path again, but I am going on this one.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And I really do believe but you need to do some soul searching why you're changing path, why you're
Gotcha.
stopping, why you're
Yep.
doing this. Are you
Yep.
doing it as an excuse so that to cover up the fact that I don't, I'm not good enough, or am I doing it because I just learned something?
Got you.
And
So,
this was not the path to go down.
yeah. No, and again, when that motivation fades, it leaves you kind of going like, why am I here? But I think if you're very clear on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and I also do believe, and again, and it's very personal because we all have our own motivators, whatnot.
Yeah.
But I very much kind of like looking back every so often, look how far I've come. Right? That gives me some. That to me is like, okay, like, or where that also is helpful too is, and I remember once I went on this really long bike journey, and I remember I got to this one hill and I was like, I can't go up this hill, right? But then I had to stop and say, wait a second, you just did 12 hills before you got to this one. Tell me you're tired. Don't tell me you can't do it, because you just proved it 12 times, right? So it's not
Yeah.
that you can't. Maybe you're tired. And tired is a part of the journey. You expect to be tired. Go up the hill. And that's what I use for myself. And that's
Yeah.
why I
You
like
got
the
it.
looking back thing.
But looking back, because you have lessons in your life where you hung in there one more time, and that's why you're a better person.
Yeah.
Because that's not, because what you did is that's part of who you are now.
Mm.
And so it becomes more of the foundation on which you take on new challenges in the future.
Yeah.
And so life is a learning experience. Fear is something to be managed and overcome. Remembering why you're on this planet to begin with,
Sure.
that you're not, why are you here? And I'm telling you, there is a reason. And I just feel, maybe because I'm a little older, I have 4 kids that are young adults now. So I'm starting to reflect on the fact of what it was like to be my grandmother when she was raising me, and I'm starting to understand that. And it feels really good to have that kind of thought and mission in my life, that there is a reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
This book is part of that, but it's not the complete. I mean, there's other things I've got to do. And, case in point, I had a lot of people when I was a young, wet behind the ears, MBA, taking chances on me, giving me promotions I didn't deserve because they saw something in me.
Yeah.
It's my turn. I'm hiring people now in my company that got tremendous potential and don't have the experience, and I'm challenging them to go do it because that's what was done for me. And since so it's part of the whole continuum of life is a better place. I'm starting to pass on what was done for me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the reason why we're not living in caves anymore is because every generation learned a little bit from the last one.
That's right. That's right. And someone had to step out of the cave. They had to be audacious
You
enough to
did.
step out of the cave.
Well, hey, this very technology we have wasn't invented by our generations
Yeah,
before us.
that's right.
But we're better
Yes.
lives, we're better everything.
Yes.
And that's, to me, there's a spiritual component here. I do believe that human beings are an exceptional form of life, a level of self-awareness that really doesn't exist anywhere else in life as we know it. You have different levels of awareness. We all have pets and dogs and all that. But, we're really the only, and you got to think about this, we're really the only creatures that can consciously commit suicide. I know that sounds terrible to say, but you're aware of yourself enough.
Right.
I mean, you have wildebeest that jump off cliffs. You have dogs and cats when they get old, they go off into they know something's happening, and the tragedies that we ever have one that it goes off in the woods and passes away. But that's different than the fact of what we can, that we have a self-awareness. And spiritually, I think we're a higher form of life in this universe. And by doing what we're doing, we're making us better every generation.
We are. We are. We absolutely are. Ed, this has been such a delightful exchange. I got to tell you, this has been just so wonderful. I appreciate the insights, the perspective, the knowledge. For our listeners, let's give the title of the book again, just so and where they can get it.
The book is available on Amazon. It's 1 Mile at a Time, Edward M. Rahill, Rahill. And it basically is the memoir of the last great American road race and the adventure we call life. And I would encourage people that if they're in the mood to try to get some inspiration from it, they can get it on this. And it's on Amazon. I'm coming out with an audiobook shortly and the whole 9 yards. We're going to do it, but you can get hardcover and softcover and ebook now on Amazon, 1 mile at a time. And I would appreciate anybody looking into it, because this is not, basically I have my intention. This is what's really good about this, why I feel good about it. I am not, if I break even on this book, I'll be lucky. I'm going to lose money, but it's a story I want to tell, and that's what I feel good about. And I would appreciate if people would read it and pass it on, because I just think there's lessons to be learned.
Well, I'm glad you wrote it, very much so. It gave us an opportunity to connect, which I'm also appreciative for. Thank you for being here. For listeners who want to connect with you directly, where can we send them, Ed?
Basically, there's a web page that's coming up as we speak. As I said, I hired some people. It's onemileproductions.com. And there's going to be a contact information available on that webpage. 1 mile, one word, onemileproductions.com. I ended up having to go with that because my accountant's saying you got to make sure that the IRS knows this is a business. I'm tired. God, I'm sorry, guys, but this is they take all the fun of it with all the accounting, but it's 1 mile at a time, and then onemileproductions.com.
We're going to make sure that the contact details are in the show notes as well, so the listeners can connect with you. Ed, thank you for this. This has been awesome. I appreciate the time. Congratulations on the book, and all the best, my friend.
Well, I love talking to you. It was fantastic. I enjoyed this tremendously. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks you.
Cool.
Thanks again.
How'd that feel?
I really appreciate it. It felt good. It's I'm glad we're doing. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to have an opportunity to talk to you. You've got tremendous reference points in your life. You've obviously went through a lot. You get everything, and it's a pleasure to talk to somebody like yourself.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. What I will do when I get it takes roughly like 4 weeks or so to kind of get things in place, maybe a bit longer. I'm falling behind a bit on some other stuff, but I promise you I'll get it out and I'll share with your contacts. Your folks here are really good taking care of you. And and we just ask that you share when it's ready to go.
Well, God bless. I hope you have a great rest of the week. And then I want to say thank you again for the opportunity. Okay.
Same here. Thank you. Take care, my friend.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.
Welcome back. What I loved about this conversation is that Ed kept bringing us back to something simple but powerful. So much of life really does come down to whether we're willing to stay in it, or one more mile, or one more moment, or even one more step. And that hit me. It really, really did, because behind all of the accomplishments and stories, what stood out was his belief that our lives are meant to be something, not just for us, but for the people who are coming after us, the next generation. I also kept thinking about that line he shared from his grandmother about being able to say the world is a better place because you were here. That's not a small thought. That's a way to live. And when you pair that with the idea that so many people quit too soon, it becomes a real challenge to all of us to keep showing up even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. It's time for an audacious insight, a quick look at something happening in the real world that reflects the power of bold thinking and intentional action. Now, when Diana Nyad completed her Cuba to Florida swim in 2013 at 64, she did it after multiple failed attempts, brutal conditions, and decades of believing it was still possible. What made that moment so powerful wasn't just the finish, it was her refusal to let previous setbacks become the final word. Her journey reminds us that breakthrough often belongs to the person who keeps going when quitting would be way easier. Sometimes audacity looks like endurance in motion. Be sure to check out Ed's book, 1 Mile at a Time, available on Amazon, and keep an eye out for more through his work at 1 Mile Productions. And if this conversation spoke to you, take a moment to follow the podcast, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a review. Sometimes the biggest breakthrough doesn't come from doing something dramatic. Sometimes it comes from the refusal to stop. So with that being said, keep showing up for the life that's asking more of you. Until next time, live life audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion. My words got power, my thoughts have action. Motivation, stay